Today we're going to be talking about Until Dawn. Obviously this is adapted from the Supermassive video game, and as soon as the marketing was released and the trailer came out, everyone noticed how different this is from the actual video game. Definitely do not go into this movie thinking you're going to get an accurate adaptation of the video game story, the setting, pretty much anything else about it. Now, this review is coming from someone who did not play the game. I have no personal attachment to the game, so I didn't necessarily mind that they were changing things. I had no opinion on that. And ironically, this is the only Supermassive game I haven't played or watched my partner play. We've played all the other ones except for Until Dawn. 1 year after her sister disappeared, Clover and her friends head to the remote valley where she vanished to search for answers, exploring an abandoned visitor center. They soon encounter a mass killer who murders them one by one. However, when they mysteriously wake up at the beginning of the same night, they're forced to relive the terror over and over again. It's a time loop movie, and let me tell you, that formula will never be boring to me. It'll never get old. I will watch every single time loop movie that comes out, no matter how bad it is. It's just like found footage for me. I will find something to enjoy about a time loop movie, even if it's a technically bad movie, cheesy movie, anything. I will probably enjoy some part of it. And I actually love how this movie was self-aware about that fact, that it was in fact a time loop, because there is a character who says, wait, isn't it just like that one movie? And then another character says, there are a lot of movies like that. And I thought that was kind of funny. It's self-aware in the sense that it knows it's a time loop movie and it knows that it's been done before and that it is not really an original idea. This is directed by David F. Sandberg, who also directed Lights Out and Annabelle Creation. And I feel like his style is not necessarily going to be for everyone, but most of the time it's kind of for me, I think. The way he does horror is very much up my alley. So Until Dawn, is this a good movie? No. Is it the most me movie of the entire year? Yes. I felt like there were so many homages to different horror tropes because this movie is so self-aware and, dare I say, arguably, some direct homages to specific horror movies. There's one scene that was very reminiscent of Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, from a famous scene from that movie. Also, we have the classic slasher vibe, naturally. There's a scene really similar to The Descent, and I really like how they took all the different elements of horror and used those tropes in the way that they did in this movie. And ultimately, that's going to be the selling point for this movie. You're going to be in it to see the horror, to see the different ways to die, the different horror elements, and you're not really going to be in it for the really good storytelling or the really good writing and performances. It's not that kind of movie, okay? My initial thought when we got about 20 minutes into the movie was, oh, this is a guilty pleasure type of movie, similar to Tarot from last year. It's gonna be one of those movies where everything else is really, really bad, and then the horror is pretty good. And that's why you're gonna wanna watch it. So there are so many movies, and I don't necessarily believe in guilty pleasure horror movies, but that's just what I call them, because are they technically a bad movie? Yeah. Does that take away from the campiness, fun vibe of it and the entertainment and the horror of it? No, not for me. The story is not going to be strong, the writing is kind of messy, the line delivery is questionable, but it's entertaining. It's just pure entertainment, to be freaked out, to be a little scared, to see the horror on screen. And sometimes that's what we want. We don't necessarily always want a long legs where it's all atmosphere and character and story. Sometimes we want a fun, good time. And that's what Until Dawn is. But as I said, about 20 minutes in, I thought this was going to be one of those movies. I don't even know if I can personally classify it as a guilty pleasure movie, because I genuinely liked this movie a lot. And don't worry, we'll get into criticisms about it because it deserves a lot of that. And I cannot rate this movie higher than a 3.5. And that is still pushing it, but my heart, just know this is one of those where my heart wants to give it a 5 because of how much fun I had with it and how much I loved all of the horror elements in it. And if this is a guilty pleasure horror movie, this is going to become my favorite guilty pleasure horror movie of all time. This isn't really a spoiler, but when the movie went a little found footage for a minute, I wanted to cheer and applaud in the theater. I got so excited. If the whole movie was found footage, then that's how this movie would become even more me. It'd be more of a me movie if it was all found footage. But the fact that there was just a little bit in there perfection. Speaking of which, the horror in this is just amazing. Like, it is so my kind of horror, and I genuinely think there's something for everyone when it comes to the horror elements in this movie. They take the variety of things, and there's just so many different things going on. And is it a little messy about it? Absolutely. Like, there's like montage, you know, it's a bunch of stuff going on, but it was so good. Some moments were genuinely terrifying. Like, there was one scene during the found footage moments that genuinely got my friend and I. We were really freaked out. Like, it was genuinely scary. There are definitely some obnoxious jump scares in there, but I was not surprised by that. Being in a movie like Until Dawn, that's the kind of movie that would do an obnoxious jump scare, you know what I mean? Now, I will do some spoilers in this video because there are some things that I really want to talk about that they did, and also how it is even connected to the video game, because they do kind of point to that. So I'll do that in spoilers, and I'll warn you, of course, before I do that. I don't want to say any more than that right now, but there is a reason why they changed everything but still kept the Until Dawn theme about it. And I thought it was done well, but again, I don't have a connection to the video game, so I had no expectation really that it would be anything like the video game, because I don't really know too much about it, but I do know the general gist of the game. I know what kind of, you know, horror element is in there, and I know I've seen some playthroughs of it. So let's talk about my criticisms of the movie. I feel like I've been gushing about the movie, but yet I can't rate it higher than 3.5. Why is that? Firstly, I don't really think it's the actors' fault that the performances were so bad, but this is definitely lacking in the acting, and I think it has to do with the way it's written, because some of the lines were just really questionable, so naturally they're going to deliver them in a really unemotional way, and the characters are just written really stupid, okay? They're going to have questionable actions and reactions to what is happening around them, and maybe you could argue that that's how a video game is written, because a lot of times in these kind of supermassive video games, the characters are written a little bit stupid, and their behavior oftentimes comes across like a video game. So because it's such a self-aware movie, I want to give it credit and say that it was meta enough to make the characters feel like a video game, but I don't think that's actually what they were going for, and the writing was just kind of bad and messy, and so the performances were naturally going to be lacking. Like, there's this one scene where these two characters, they reset, and I think it had been the second go around. Okay, they've died twice now, and they reset on the third day, and one of them is like, I think we just died again, and the other one is like, yeah. And that's how they delivered it. There was no emotion. It's like, you've only died twice now. You would still be traumatized by what you're experiencing. This is not the 30th night, okay? This is night 2. And you're just like, yeah, we died again. Shucks. Like, all of the reactions were very subdued and were not believable or realistic in the slightest. And again, anytime I say that, I always follow it up with, it's a movie. Naturally, it's going to be unrealistic at times, and you're going to have to hold suspension of disbelief a little bit because it's a movie, especially this kind of movie. It's supernatural. But I feel like some of the reactions could have been a little bit better and bigger. I think it deserved a bigger reaction some of the time. Now, with a movie like this, you're going to need some kind of explanation as to what's going on, and I think, you know, the explanation itself is very interesting. However, there is a bit of a plot dump, and anytime, I'm just not a fan. I don't love a plot dump. I feel like there's always ways to go around that, but in this situation, they just went full steam ahead with just explaining it to you verbally of what is happening. And I think the overall messaging of this movie is important. Don't get me wrong. I fully believe in it too, but it's a little sappy and a little on the nose. Like, the overall concept of we only have one life, so it means so much more, is a little bit cheesy, okay? You have to admit. You have to have that obligatory conversation in the movie, right? That, oh, we have one life to live. We can't just live it sitting around. We actually have to go out there and live life. That's the theme of the movie, and it's like, that's fine. I believe that. I believe in that, trust me, more than ever, okay? in my life, I'm at a stage where I fully believe that. It just reads a little bit corny and a little bit cheesy. I think the movie in itself is pretty unserious, so when we come in with that, like, they think it's like a deep take, a deep concept to put in there, it's like, and it's so on the nose with like what is happening in the movie with them dying every day. Speaking of which, you'd think that with them dying every day and them coming back and resetting, that it would take away a lot of the tension and the fear around that, because normally the stakes are high because the characters will die. Like, that is the ultimate stakes, right? They're gonna lose their life. But because each time they died by something new happening and like a different horror element happening, I felt like it still kept that excitement going, even if we weren't necessarily afraid of their actual death itself. We were so curious to see how they were gonna do it. So overall, I really don't think this movie deserves all of the hate it's getting. I fully understand why people are upset if they were wanting a video game adaptation and they didn't get that. And I think it honestly did itself a disservice by trying to do that, because they took so many liberties to make this movie, and I think that's why fans of the game are not going to enjoy this movie. And also the criticisms I talked about, it's technically, on a technical level, not a great movie. Except I will say the practical effects and the gore and all the horror stuff was really good. I feel like that's where they put all their effort into, and the writing and the performances were not strong. That's not the strong suit of this movie. But again, it's my kind of horror. It's up my alley. It's like exactly what I want in a horror movie, my favorite kind of horror elements to look at visually. So in that sense, I'm going to give it a little bit more of a pass for bad writing, because I had a genuinely fun time with it. I think if it was its own thing and not connected to the video game at all, I think people would enjoy this more, and you know, it would still be a campy movie and it would still be cheesy, but I think people wouldn't be as upset about it being an adaptation that isn't a great adaptation by any means. Especially because I see the biggest criticism for this is that the game itself is already set up like a movie. Like, all you have to do is just write a script and play it out, because the games play like horror movies. That's one of the selling points of the Supermassive game. So I fully understand the criticism for that fact, because the recipe, the formula was right there. It's right there in the game, and they decided to go a completely different route for whatever reason. I don't know if they just, you know, wanted to tack on the title to get hype or what, but I don't think changing that much about the game is a way to get fans of the game to be excited about the movie. Overall, I would describe this movie as like Cabin in the Woods meets Tarot from last year set in a time loop. And to me, that sounds like a great time. Like, that is, it's like I said, it's such a me movie. And if you have very similar taste in horror and you typically like the same kind of horror elements that I do, then I think you would have fun with this movie. But again, it's not a great movie, but all of the horror elements are there, and it's genuinely scary at times. So let's do spoilers, shall we? I feel like I have to talk about some of the things in this movie that are definite spoilers, and then I'll also talk about how it ties back to the video game itself. So if you haven't watched it yet, don't watch the rest of this video. Let's start with the video game connection first, because I feel like that might be the most interesting thing for you guys to find out about. Okay, so obviously they change everything about the story, the characters, it's a different backstory. This is not set in the snow. Again, I never played the game, so I can't do a direct comparison, but I do know that they changed a lot of things about it. So the very last shot in the movie are security cameras, and we see one of them change seasons to the winter, okay, and a car pull up. And that's where the movie ends. So my theory is that this movie is a prequel to the video game. Is that the best explanation as to why they changed everything? Not necessarily, but if they're setting up for a sequel and then they do the Until Dawn video game real adaptation, that might be interesting. Why they didn't do that in the first place, I don't know. But I was actually excited when I saw that, because I was like, that's the video game. Like, those are the characters in the video game pulling up to this visitor center in the snow, because as we know, the video game takes place in the snow. Another thing that they tie back into from the video game, so obviously the video game is about the Wendigo, and they do explore that a little bit in the movie, which I thought was really interesting. Like, they keep the folklore of the Wendigo, but they change how it comes to be, which is so weird. So we do have Wendigos, in plural, in this movie, and they are created basically from these human experiments that they did by keeping people in a time loop of dying and resetting. And when you go too long, like too many days, you transform, you become this like hungry monster. They become the Wendigo. And all of this is revealed within a plot dump in the movie. Conveniently, they find some tapes and all the experimentation was happening there on the premises. And they kind of say that they become so starved and that's why they become violent towards anybody else. And it does feel a little bit shoehorned into the movie, like the concept and like putting Wendigos in here. It feels a little bit forced, but we're dealing with a lot of other horror elements, so it's like, why not? That's the thing that got the most attention and the most explanation as to what these things are. But, you know, I feel like that we kind of needed some kind of explanation, and that's what they chose to focus on because that is the biggest connection to the video game. We also have people who stay trapped in this loop and they eventually become part of the loop. So they become these monster creatures, and so there's this emotional scene where Clover has to eventually kill her sister in order to survive because her sister has been stuck in the loop for so long. She's become... I don't know if you can say that she's become a Wendigo, but she became a horror person in this loop. Poor Meg. Poor Meg in this movie, man. They gave her the worst of the worst treatment in this movie. I don't know. Okay, here's my theory. Meg obviously got the most violent scenes. She seemed to be the most sensitive to the loop, and I think it's because she was a medium, so she could like sense spirits and like she was a little bit psychic. So I think that's why it affected her so much, or at least I hope, because otherwise why are we picking on Meg? Because every scene was so horrific for her. In fact, I think the most horrific scene of the entire movie was Meg, one of Meg's deaths. They all stay cooped up in a bathroom trying to like survive the night, and they are thirsty, so they drink the water out of the tap, which that scene, first of all, was a red flag. It was really weird. So the guy drinks a full glass of water and then he's like, anybody else? And everyone raises their hand. And then they each share one glass of water. They take a sip and pass it around. And I just feel like that's not how you would drink water in that scenario. I don't know why that really stood out to me as something really stupid because no matter what, you would just drink a glass. Like you would just take turns drinking a full glass of water. If you're thirsty, you don't just take a sip. I don't know, that scene stood out to me. And then sure enough, the water is dangerous and it makes them spontaneously combust. Except for Meg, who for some reason, I mean, it got on her. I think that's why, because the water pipe like bursts and it's spraying on them and stuff. And I can't remember if she drank from the cup or not, but I think that's why, it's because the water got on her outside. But her leg blows up, her stomach bulges, and you know, she's still alive, and then eventually her head. But it's like, that was so dragged out and horrifying, but the practical effects were so good and so disturbing. So as much as I liked the found footage element, obviously, when they were going through the videos on his phone, I would have liked to see it. I wanted to see those things happen. And I feel like they had to put that in because they had to explain like the time jump. I don't even know why there was a time jump, to be honest. Maybe they didn't want to get too repetitive because they jump from day 3 and then they realize it's actually day 13 and they're on their last day already before they become like these weird things and they get stuck in the loop forever. So it's an interesting reveal to them losing track of time, but I just wanted more. I wish we could have seen all 13. I would have been fine with that, even if it was repetitive. I wanted to see everything that this loop had to offer. And the videos on the phone were a good way to like montage through all the things, but like some of the things, I wanted a full scene. I wanted to see all of them experience that. So in general, I genuinely really liked this movie. If this was a book, I would be jealous that I didn't write it, because this is a story and like a concept that I love so much, because anything that you can just pack in a bunch of horror elements into, like Cabin in the Woods, you know, is so up my alley. But there are just too many things I can't really overlook when it comes to like rating this movie. But like enjoyment wise, I will own this and I will rewatch this because it's just a fun time while also being scary, which is kind of rare for me. So don't go into it expecting the best movie of the year. It's not going to be, but it will be one of my personal favorites and like standouts of the year because of how much fun I had with this movie. So I would love to hear your opinions down below if you enjoyed Until Dawn and your thoughts. If you were upset about it or if you found enjoyment in it as well, leave a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you soon.